Greetings to everybody to Older Women Rule the Waves. I'm Guy Lemire, and I'm the founder of Say Yes to Life Swims. I want to welcome all our inspiring panelists, as well as the hundreds of participants or attendees from around the world. I know for sure we have people from South Africa, from Sweden, from Australia, from the UK, from the US, and from many other countries that I'm not sure of all the countries, actually. I am going to put on closed captioning in just a second. So attendees, you are going to have the opportunity to ask questions throughout this webinar. I wanted to show you the bottom of the screen. Make sure you can see that. You have a QA down there. You can tap that at any point and put in questions. We have Melissa Kegler, a Triple Crown mermaid in her own right, who is gathering those questions and who will rank them to make sure that the most often asked questions are answered. First, though, I want to ask the attendees some questions just to get the ball rolling. Can you imagine, can you even picture swimming across the English Channel? Well, now, can you picture swimming twice across the English Channel? Let me ask you a different one. Can you imagine what it might be like to swim around Manhattan Island? That's the island where New York is, obviously. And can you picture circumventing that twice, going all the way around that 2 times? It's incredible. What kind of preparation do you think it takes for a 36-hour swim or even longer? And if you are totally new to open water swimming, welcome. Have you ever wondered how these amazing panelists, what first steps they took to prepare themselves for their journeys ahead? Well, you're going to hear about all that in our webinar today. You'll hear about the hardships, the challenges, and the incredible achievements of all 4 of our swimmers today. Before we actually kick off the introductions, I have a couple of thank yous. One of them is for Stephen Munatones. He is the head of the World Open Water Swimming Association, and he helped me connect with these panelists. You know why? Because they don't blow their own horns. You know, if it hadn't been for Stephen, I wouldn't necessarily have known that these incredible swimmers were doing what they're doing after the age of 60. And that's why this webinar is so unique. This has never happened before, where the greatest female over 60 open water swimmers in the world have gotten together to share their experiences with us. I also wanted to thank Melissa, who I already mentioned. She's behind the scenes gathering your questions, and Tom Field, who is our technical producer. Without him, we would not be able to carry this webinar off. So thank you, Tom, from the bottom of our hearts. So Say Yes to Life Swims, which is the company that I run, is hosting this webinar. Our mission, as you can see there, is to enhance every swimmer's enjoyment of the open water. And we've been around since 2011. This is our 3rd Women in the Open Water seminar that we've hosted since 2017. We really like to highlight the achievement of women open water swimmers. In Seattle, Washington, that's the Northwest United States for you and other countries. And what we provide is non-competitive escorted open water swims, which are actually really super fun, also called excursions, and individual lessons and coaching. So that's who your hosts are today. The goal of our webinar is to all of us learn from the greatest open water swimmers over age 60 in the world. And here they are. I just want to give an overview of our amazing panelists. We're going to do a deep dive into their intros very, very soon. There's Liz Fry, there's Gina Harden, there's Sally Mintry-Gravette, MBE, and there's Pat Gallant-Charette. Welcome to all of you. To the attendees, what can you get out of this workshop or this seminar? Let's look at the overview today. We'll start with those panelists' introductions. And then I'm going to give everyone a kickoff question, which all 4 of the panelists will respond to. They will then have the opportunity to give their own stories, their own journeys, using their photographs. All during this, feel free to be asking questions using that Q&A. We already gathered some questions from the Seattle swim community. I'll ask them a few of those, and then we'll go to the questions that have been coming in over the course of the webinar. This is Pacific time now, and I know it's not going to make sense to some of you, but at 1 o'clock, we will close, having had closing thoughts from each panelist. So that's our plan for the day, and I'm super excited. Let's get started with introductions, and I'd like to start with Pat. First, I want to make sure that I have turned on the manual captioner, just to make sure that everyone can, let's just do that. Hopefully that's there. If not, send Melissa a Q&A and maybe she can get in touch with me if you can't see the captioning. And I'll continue to try on that. So, hey, Pat, I'm going to introduce you first. So Pat Gallant-Charette is 72 years old. She's been nominated, and Tom, if you could highlight Pat, that would be great. She's been nominated for the 2022 World Open Water Swimming Woman of the Year. Woohoo! She is a multiple world record holder, and some of the swims she's most proud of after the age of 60 include the English Channel in 2017, in which she was the oldest woman at age 66, the Molokai Channel at age 66, also the oldest woman, Lake Ontario, a big 31 miles, at age 66, the oldest woman, and she joined the 24-hour club. So Pat, you need to tell us what that's all about. And also the Bristol Channel, which was 16 miles between Wales and England at age 71. She was the oldest woman for that as well. She's not going to stop there. She's got some plans for 2023, and that includes Lake Malawi in Africa, it's almost 15 miles, and Lake Zurich in Switzerland. So Pat, would you like to say a few words to us all?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I will be sharing my journey of marathon swimming and how I went from spectator mom to being inducted into the International Marathon Swim Hall of Fame. Thank you again.
Woohoo! So glad that you're here. Let's maybe they're invisibly giving you a round of applause. Our next panelist is Gina Harden. She is 63 years young, and Gina has had an incredibly stellar military career. In the United States Navy, she's been a captain, and she was in the Navy for 35 years. She is the 7th woman to become a deep sea diver in the United States military and was inducted into the Women Divers Hall of Fame in 2003. Very interesting to me is that she worked intensively with 6 dolphins and 2 sea lions during in the U.S. Navy's Marine Mammal Program in the Middle East during the Gulf War. In terms of swimming, very accomplished. She did the English Channel, 20 bridges, which I'm not too familiar with, and the Catalina Channel. Over the age of 60, Gina has done one of the most, and I'm going to put this in quotes, leisurely triple crowns. And I'm going to leave her to describe what leisurely means and what triple crown is. And her plans for 2024 include swimming across Gibraltar. Amazingly accomplished. Welcome, Gina. Would you like to say a few words to us?
Thank you, Gila. Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to be here today amongst the icons in the marathon swimming world. I didn't start my marathon swimming career, like Gila said, until I turned 60. So I'm as excited as you are to listen to my fellow panelists. So thank you, Gila, Tom, and Melissa for this opportunity.
Oh, so glad to have you. Woohoo! Give her a round of applause, folks.
Hey.
Thank you. Our third panelist is Sally Minty Gravett, MBE. MBE, I discovered, is a British honor awarded to a person by the king or queen for a spectacular achievement. Sally is 65 years old. She is also a Guinness World Record holder for 2 separate events. The first is the 2-way English Channel swim that I mentioned. She's the oldest woman to have accomplished that. Sal also did 6 solo English Channel swims in 6 consecutive decades. I believe she's the only person to have accomplished that. She has other records, and this one is incredible. She did the round Jersey swims, and you're going to have to tell us ignoramuses exactly where Jersey is. Each of these was 36 miles, but she did it 4 times in separate times. She's the only woman to have accomplished that fact. And she also doesn't plan on stopping soon. She has actually started rowing this year. And she shares with us that her toughest swim was Lake Tahoe in 2019 at age 62. So we'd be interested to hear about that. But Sal, please let us hear from you a little bit.
Well, thank you, Gila, for inviting me. I feel very honored to be the only Brit here. There are some amazing swimmers around the world, and I feel very honored to be amongst this iconic group of panelists here, among so many swimmers around the world. And I'm really looking forward to sharing my story, my journey, which has been my life, really. And I'll let you know where Jersey is in all due course.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's give her a round of applause.
Yay.
Yay. All right. And our 4th panelist is Liz Fry. She is 64 years old. She is the oldest person and woman to complete the Ocean 7. And we do have a map of that, Liz. So when you want to call on that, just let us know and you can show us. Liz is the first and fastest to complete the double Ederle swim. And that is from Battery, New York City to Sandy Hook, New York, and back. Come on. She's also the first female to reverse circumvent Manhattan Island, beating the previous record by 6 hours. She held the speed record for 12 years until 2021. So the swims that Liz is most proud of after the age of 60 include the treacherous Cook Strait, the North Channel swim, and 3 of the 5 Great Lakes, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. Liz's plans for 2023 include Capri to Naples and the Bristol Channel. So you're going to have to tell us about the Bristol Channel as well. So Liz, would you like to say hi to everybody?
Of course. I feel so lucky and I'm thrilled to be among these amazing women. I think I might be the only one that have met all of them in person, which is just, and I've been in awe. We had a brief session earlier in the week and I am just in awe of their stories and it's amazing. So I'm thrilled to be here and welcome to everybody that's joining. We'd love having you and sharing, our journey and whatever we can do to help you meet your goals. It'd be great.
You. Yeah, thank you so much. Let's give Liz a round of applause. Woo-hoo! So I'm going to toss out a question that I'd like all of you to respond to. I'm going to start with Pat. Here's my question, though, and if you need me to repeat it, just let me know. What swim are you most proud of doing after the age of 60? Also tell us what made it so special. Give us the details, challenges, hardships, any sort of learnings that you got from that. So Pat, could you kick us off?
Yes. I am most proud of my 2017 English Channel crossing at the age of 66, setting a record at that time for the oldest woman. But it was my journey to get to the start line that I am most proud of. I didn't start open water swimming until my late 40s after a family tragedy. My 34-year-old brother died unexpectedly of a heart attack. It was devastating loss. At that time, I was working as a nurse and very busy with family duties. I considered myself a mom, and the extent of my exercise was going for an occasional walk with other neighborhood moms. I knew how to swim, but did not swim as a form of exercise. A short time later, my 16-year-old son came up to me and said he wanted to swim the Peaks to Portland, that's a 2.4 ocean mile swim here in Maine, as a tribute to his Uncle Robbie. I remember saying to him, "That's so sweet, I wish I could do the same." He said, "Ma, you can if you try." I was not expecting him to say that because I was one that was bringing him to high school swim practices, track meets, and soccer games. I was not an athlete. And I thought where would I find the time to train with my busy work schedule as a registered nurse and full-time duties with my family? But I decided to give it a try. After all, it was going to be my one and only open water swim event. Little did I know that I was going to fall in love with the sport of open water swimming. My first day at the pool to train, I asked the lifeguard to keep an eye on me because I didn't know if I could swim 2 lengths of the pool. It took me over a year of training before I qualified for that 2-mile swim. On the day of the Peaks to Portland, I became overwhelmed with self-doubt. I remember looking at all the other athletes, and they were young and slender. And I remember saying to myself, what did you get yourself into? I quickly calmed myself by telling myself that this is a tribute to Robbie. And halfway through that swim, I fell in love with the sport. Was it easy? Heck no, because I have a fear of swimming in deep ocean water ever since a traumatic event during my childhood. Here in Maine, when I train in the ocean, it's always in waist depth water. The only time I swim in deep ocean water is the day of the event, such as the English Channel. I learned to place my fear on the back burner on the day of the event. I am a very confident woman, and I strategically plan all of my swims. I study the ocean currents, tides, along with endurance training, cold water acclimation, night swim, and the list goes on. However, I noticed from the very beginning of my swim career to the present day that I have self-doubt about my swim when I'm standing at the start line and then during my swim. The English Channel and several other long distance swims, I felt like quitting several times. About 80% of my swim, I wanted to quit, but I was not showing any signs of hypothermia or fatigue. So I continued swimming. I have learned not to listen to my negative thoughts, but to tune into my physical response of swimming for several hours. Since that very first open water swim, I have set multiple Guinness World Records and have been inducted into the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. To this day, my journey is what I cherish and most proud of. Thank you.
Hopefully you can hear everybody, all those hundreds clapping for you. That was fantastic. Thank you. Woo! All right. So Gina, what swim are you most proud of after the age of 60? Tell us more about it.
Okay, I was an AAU age group swimmer living in Spain, and my mom is from London. So every holiday, we would take the ferry across the English Channel to see my grandparents. And so at 11 years old, I remember standing on the rails of the ferry, looking out at the beautiful white cliffs of Dover. And my parents told me about people that had swum the channel. So I distinctly remember saying to myself, one day I'll swim the English Channel. So many times during my life, I had the yearning to swim to France, and it occupied my mind. But when I turned 50, I had all but given up that dream, thinking it would never happen. But then I retired from the Navy, and I decided, what better time? So I started training to make my attempt. And so then my goal was to swim the English Channel on my 60th year. And so the English Channel is my favorite swim because it is the realization of a 50-year dream. Wow. And it has opened up me to this marvelous community of people who share my love of the water. Swimmers have always been my favorite people, but it's and I loved everything about the English Channel. So, okay, so maybe not the French inshore when I swam parallel to the beach for 2 hours and couldn't get in, but everything else I pretty much loved. As I prepared my swim, just as Pat has said, I tried to remain cognizant of living in the moment and really enjoying the journey. And I believe I was able to do that because it turned out to be an extraordinary time in my life, and it was the catalyst for my Triple Crown. And I do wish I could live it all again, and not just the swim itself, but the 3 years around these people and preparing for my swim. So that's my favorite.
Fabulous. Hey, Gina, before we're going to hear from Sal, but let me ask you, since you mentioned Triple Crown, can you please define or describe for everybody what the Triple Crown is?
Sure. The Triple Crown is 3 marathon swims, includes the English Channel, the Catalina Channel, and 20 Bridges, which is the swim around 28.5 mile swim around Manhattan Island.
Oh, so that describes for me 20 Bridges as well. I never knew the Manhattan Island was called that as well. Thank you. Sal, we bow down to you. Tell
Please
us
don't.
what you've done after the age of 60 that you're most proud of and why.
So for those who don't know, I've swum the channel in each of my 10 decades of my life, in over 50 years, 60 years. And my most proudest swim was my 2-way English Channel. I'd been talking about it for probably 15 years before I actually did it. Never thought I'd get round to doing it. It was booked in 2013, and I was 56 at the time. And I ended up doing just a 1-way. People called me a failure because I hadn't done a 2-way, but I'd still done a 1-way. I then rebooked my 2-way for 2014. Never even got to Dover because the weather was so bad. Rebooked it for 2015. Went to Dover, sat in Dover. The weather was terrible and never got in the water. So then I decided to cut my losses, and I resigned as president of the Jersey Long Distance Swimming Club after 27 years. And I also stepped down as being aquatics development manager for the company that I was working for in the local swimming pool, so that I had time to focus on me, time to focus on my training, and to give myself time to train for this properly. And then, so in 2016, that was my year, and I managed to complete it. And it was very bittersweet. I became the oldest person at the time when I completed it. But now I'm the oldest lady. There's a man gone in, he was 10 months older than me a couple of years later. So he is the oldest swimmer, but I am still the oldest woman. I'm very, very proud of that. At the age of 59, sorry, I'm not 60, but I was 59 when I did it, but I'm still very, very proud of that. And then obviously I finished it on the 41st anniversary of my first channel swim in 1975, which was pretty cool. And so after 60, I think my channel swim last year, which was my swim for my late husband, who I lost in 2020, and I did it in his memory. So that was, yeah. I have a lot of swims to talk about. But
You sure do. And we have more time to talk, but that was, I love that journey of finally doing your vision. Yeah, getting that done with so many roadblocks along the way.
A long time coming, but I'm glad it's done.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. And Liz, how about you? What's the swimmer that you've been most proud of after the age of 60, and why?
So
Uh-oh. Suddenly can't hear you. Hey, Tom.
I'm good.
All right.
I think it was the last swim of my Ocean 7, which was the North Channel. In 2019, I had prepared and swum Cook Strait, which was another very challenging swim, mostly because of the need. It wasn't just a long distance swim, but it was a swim that you needed speed for. The last 2 or 3 hours are quite difficult. So as I was approaching the North Channel, and this was a swim, and I'm sure Sally can remember, lots of people can remember saying, that is a swim I will never do. And there, and I don't know who magically signed up for it, but anyhow, there I was, and and the challenge with the North Channel is, and it's a beautiful swim, but it is cold. And for me, the biggest fear, if the cold didn't get me, the jellyfish would. And the jellyfish in the North Channel are vicious. You know, you really really need to prepare for that. And through that whole, I think my preparation for the North Channel is really what I'm very happy about, because I reached out to everybody I knew, people that were successful, people that were unsuccessful, and got all the information around what works, what should I do, how do I get over the, deal with the jellyfish. I remember arriving in this beautiful town called Donegal, and being welcomed by this wonderful group of swimmers called the Chunky Dunkers. And there I am, this bouncy American walking down, and now I have to go down the slipway. And so it's in August, and I just come from swimming in Connecticut where the water was probably high 60s, to walk into the water and hope that nobody sees me crying, because the water, I'm walking down and I'm saying, you can't look back, Liz, you can't look back. This water's so cold. Don't let them see you cry. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And for I had probably 5 to 6, 7 days to train before I got there. I had planned to go early, and I did. And I had friends there that I knew that had from other places in the world. So it was just a wonderful time training. And once, it's like anything that you do with cold water, or, you acclimate. And once you're acclimated, you're in good shape. But, the jellyfish was still out there. And really, from research and just friends and the support of this welcoming and wonderful community, I got the list of all the tips that you needed to do. And I had, at times during my swim, when that morning started, I was, of course, terrified. Within the first 6 minutes, I got whacked by a bunch of jellyfish, and, and that lasted the whole way. But I had the most fantastic crew, out on the boat, and great pilot who they just try to steer me around. Okay, go a little this way, go a little that way. And sometimes they go, I don't know what way to tell you, because you're going right through it. But I did not think at the end of my swim that I would be speaking of as just another one of my most joyful swims. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And everything about the people that I met, and just everybody was so supportive and so wonderful. So that's my proudest swim.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, it's so interesting that something that you feared and so much, and don't let them see me cry, turned into one of your absolute most favorite, experiences of your life. I have 2 questions for you before we move on. One is, can you please tell us all what the North Channel is, where it is, how long it is, how cold the water is, and what kind of jellyfish? Were they lion's mane, or were they some other kind?
Okay, so the North Channel swim typically starts at around in Donegal, and goes from Ireland to Scotland.
Okay.
And I always say they're all around the same distance, like 20 miles or so.
Okay.
And the jellyfish, primarily lion's manes. And the problem with the lion mane is not just the jellyfish, but the tentacles could be 100 feet long.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And that's what's going to get you. And if they get chopped up, and they're still just as bad. As I was, so that was mostly from the beginning to, I would say, about 2/3 of the way. And then, looking down, you can see compass jellyfish, and a couple of those big barrel jellyfish, which are about the size of, a 6-foot man. They're big, but they're way down there. And I'm not talking about them. I can outswim them.
What?
I think
you're scaring,
but it's a lion's mane.
It's
a lion's mane, and
yeah,
I mean, to the point, you are so covered with barbs when and this was a tip that one of my friends gave me that, I will take when I finish this swim. She said, and she's very famous. I don't know if she's on the call, but Jenny Smith told me, get out of the water. Don't let anybody touch you. Have them cover you with shaving cream and scrape the barbs off of you with a used or old credit card, and just to get all the jellyfish barbs. And you're still going to feel terrible for 24 hours, all through the night. It's the toxins are firing and stuff like that. But as everybody said, you'll get you'll get through it. Or the alternative is that you end up in the hospital. But for the most part, I got through it. So I did everything everybody told me to do.
So, your story just there, it's familiar in terms of the lion's mane, because here in the Northwest, we share those jellyfish. They're here as well because of the frigidity of Puget Sound. What you said, though, is enough to turn the beginning open water swimmers that are on this call totally off. So, you know what I mean? Because of the fear of jellyfish. But it's a reality. I mean, there's lots of realities of open water swimming that everyone needs to know about. We're going to segue right now into each panelist speaking individually about her unique journey, and she'll be showing some photographs, etc. And let's talk both about the good, bad, and the ugly about your experiences. I'm going to ask Pat again to kick this off. And just tell Tom when you want to see the photos, okay?
Okay, we'll start with the photos now. Tom?
They're waiting. There we go.
Okay, this is Lake Tahoe, and that's my nephew, Chris. His dad was my brother, Robbie, who passed away. Chris was 3 years old when his dad passed, and he's been a member of my crew for several of my swims. But for any successful marathon swim, it takes a combined effort of pilot, crew, and swimmer. It's teamwork. Next photo, please. Lake Windermere in England. The scenery of open water swimming can be breathtaking. I actually stopped my swim for a few minutes to watch these graceful swans. Next photo, please. The Strait of Gibraltar between Spain and Africa. This swim was a turning point for me at the age of 59. I felt the health benefits of swimming, and I knew this would be a lifelong enjoyment. And for me, it felt like the fountain of youth for my body, mind, and spirit. And now at the age of 72, I feel strong, vibrant, and looking forward to my next marathon swim. Next photo. The English Channel. Preparation is vital. Endurance training, cold water acclimation, night swims, practicing quick feeds along with crew training. I loved the swim. I loved seeing the background. Next photo.
It's amazing.
Then swimsuits for all. After my English Channel swim, I was invited to a photo shoot in California to be with Brooke Shields and Ashley Graham. The swimsuits company recognizes swimmers from all different ages and sizes. And that was a very unique experience for me. Next photo, please. Okay. Swimming in iconic locations is certainly an adventure, but a local swim with your best buddies can be just as fun and rewarding experience. Next photo, please. Okay, the World Open Water Swim Association 2022. I was nominated for World Open Water Swimmer Woman of the Year. I was deeply touched by the nomination. I congratulate Sarah Thomas for winning this prestigious award. Our swim community has a very strong, supportive bond. I am honored to be a member of it. Thank you.
Oh, we're all applauding you. And I don't know, panelists, can you see the hearts and applauds and all these icons that are coming up for you? Or
Yep.
Good. You're getting tons of them, Pat.
Oh, thank you.
And let me ask you a quick question, Pat, and then I'm
Yes.
going to go to our next speaker. But can you tell us a little what you learned specifically through the training process? As you train, what are some of the takeaways from training? And then you others can respond to that as
Well,
well.
I think the endurance training was a key factor for me because when I first started off, I had trouble, swimming for even 30 minutes. And I can remember the first time I finished swimming 1 hour in a pool. I mean, I felt like Michael Phelps getting out of that. I mean, I felt like I won an Olympic gold, and I just never imagined that after I turned 50, that my endurance would drastically improve. But what I did, I just gradually increased on my time. I would swim for 1 hour and 15 minutes for a few weeks. Then I'd increase it to 1 hour and a half, then 1 hour and 45 minutes. And all of a sudden, here I am in my 50s, and I could do 10-mile swims, 20-mile swims. And then, swimming Lake Ontario, that was 24 hours it took me. And I did complete the North Channel. And I agree with Liz, there's a lot of planning and also tuning into other people's advice, about planning.
Thank you so much. Wow. So Gina, love to hear about your journey.
Well, my whole life's been about the sea. So as Gia said, I'm a 35-year United States Navy combat veteran, having served in both Afghanistan and Iraq. And I was one of the first female Navy divers in the military. And I started diving when the suits were made of copper and brass. The diving rig in this picture is called Mark V, and it's the first diving rig the Navy dove, and also that I dove. It weighs 200 pounds. So if you've seen the movie Men of Honor, you'll have some idea of the training and the mission of Navy diving. And fortunately, while I was in the Navy, I was able to be part of some historic diving, which include the recovery of the USS Monitor, which is the first ironclad battleship from the Civil War, and it was in 240 feet of water. I was a part of the recovery of the USS Betsy, which was a Revolutionary War schooner that was scuttled by British General Cornwallis to keep the French fleet out of Yorktown. And then I was also a diver for the recovery of crew members and personal effects from the Emmy Maru, which was a Japanese high school fishing vessel, which one of our submarines did an emergency ascent under and ended up sinking it. I also told you about I was responsible for the deployment and employment of the Navy's anti-swimmer marine mammals to the Middle East for the Gulf War. And we transported 6 dolphins and 2 sea lions to Bahrain to provide force protection for our harbors on ships. So in order to train these mammals, we would do what we call dolphin calibration. And the dolphins were sent to find us while we were in scuba underwater. And when they found, they'd ram you, and you'd never hear them coming, and it would move you about 4 feet through the water column. And you had to keep your elbows in so they didn't break your ribs. But that was always fun. So mental and physical toughness were a requirement that during my time in the Navy, and I'm grateful for that because I feel like it made me successful and prepared me for marathon swimming. And so in 2003, I was inducted into the International Women Diver Hall of Fame. Next photo, please, Tom. So upon my retirement from the Navy, I began to train for my dream of swimming the English Channel. And as I live in Florida, cold water was going to be the biggest challenge in my channel swim. So I routinely filled my bathtub up with 2 25-pound bags of ice after my 80-degree swim in the pool. And I did manage to get into some cold water training in Alcatraz and Robbins Islands. And I naively signed up to swim SCAR, which I thought, oh, this will be a great training swim. Well, SCAR in itself, 45 miles over 4 days, is not a training swim. It's an event unto itself. So when I finally did jump from the boat from Shakespeare Beach into the English Channel, it was very comfortable for me. So I was very grateful for that. I was pleasantly surprised. This is 20 bridges. This is New York. It's a 28.5-mile swim around Manhattan, and it's beautiful with the Statue of Liberty in the background and the morning sun gleaming off the skyscrapers. And it was a special swim for me because I did a tandem swim with my good friend Melanie Terrell. And I must say, it was a most eventful swim. We started out swimming without our kayaker, and Liz was there as a kayaker, so she can tell you. I was doing great, and then I swam into a whirlpool that almost spun me 180 degrees in a second, and I had to swim out of. The safety boat ended up side-swiping me. I wasn't injured, but took me for a shock. And then I ended up having the current ram me into one of the bridge pilings that I had to kind of claw my way out from behind. And then I got a cramp after that. So I yelled, "Hot shot," which is a shot of cinnamon and ginger and capsaicin that really helps with cramps in case if you have that problem like I do. But the cramp finally subsided. And then after swimming under the George Washington Bridge, which is the last bridge of the 20 bridges, we entered these wicked currents, and the final home stretch down the Hudson was like surfable waves. And it was a wild ride and some really fun open water swimming. So, you'd ride the peak of the wave and try and find your kayaker, and then you'd fall back down in the trough. So it was a real merry-go-round. And so there's also stories about swimmers coming on dead rats, on the swim. That I didn't happen to see any rodents, but I did have to throw my bathing suit away after the swim because it was just filthy. But next slide, please, Tom.
Wow.
So this is Catalina, and I plan to do Catalina as the last swim of my Triple Crown journey because everyone said how beautiful it was, the night sky and the phosphorescence, and it's much easier than the Channel. So it's a midnight. It is a midnight start. You have the blackest of nights, and the night sky is gorgeous. Shooting stars running across the sky. So my predicted time was 15, 16 hours. So I ended up swimming in place for several hours due to crosswinds and surface currents. But I imagine my kayaker had a pretty good laugh when in my 10th hour I yelled, home stretch, hour of power. So my swim ended up taking 22 hours is what I'm saying. Yeah. So at one point during my swim, I felt this presence beside me. So I looked to my left and I saw this large gray body within like 5-10 feet of me. And of course, what's your first thought? I won't say the word, but one of those animals. But it turned out to be a baby whale. So I'm not sure where mom was, but baby was right there beside me. And she came back twice. So these are the really special things about it. So the final hours were tough. I saw the sun going down. I did look to my crew at about 20 hours. And this is the first time I thought, I'm going to get out. I looked at them and they were shaking their heads no. And so I flipped over and kept swimming. So the temperature drops like 3 miles from shore, and it was about 55 degrees. So in the end, I couldn't even see the beach. My kayaker shone a flashlight on the shore and I followed it. I ran into some massive kelp at the shoreline, and I was literally pulling hands full of kelp to get to the beach. And when I finally reached the beach, I was exhausted and shivering. I was close to hypothermia, but I was still shivering, so that's good. It took me most of the way back to the harbor to recover. It was my toughest and most challenging swim. So I'm hoping to do Gibraltar Strait next year, possibly one other major swim. Who knows? I'm still young. So
Yes, thank you, Gina. Wow. And again, so interesting. Something that you thought might be, this is a breeze after Manhattan turned out to be extremely challenging. Thank you for that. Sal, we would love to hear from you.
Okay. Well, can I just say that when I swam around Manhattan in 1999, I swam around the trade buildings that went down. So I was very fortunate. I'm very lucky to have done that. It was spectacular. It's one of my favorite swims, actually. So can I have the first photo, please? Okay, this should be the last photo, but doesn't matter. There we are. So my journey of my swims, I learned to swim in the sea at the age of 3. I was born in the Belgian Congo, which is in Africa. And the coolest place to keep me as a baby was in the water. So when I came back to Jersey, and Jersey is a little island between England and France, very close to France, much closer to France, 15 miles from France. So we're in the Bay of St. Malo, and it's a beautiful island, 36 miles round, and lots of people come and swim around it. And so my journey started in the sea when I was 3. I had my swimming lessons, like most people have swimming pools, but I learned to swim in the sea. So my natural habitat was the sea right the way through. The first indoor pool wasn't built and opened until I was 12. I was already a competitive swimmer and a champion swimmer by the age of 10 in the sea. And then swimming changed because swimming clubs started swimming more. Then records start getting broken, people train more, and then another swimming pool opened and another swimming club was formed in 1971. And then we had 2 swimming clubs, a lot more early morning training in warm water all year round. And so swimming changed, and then I decided to stay in this. I was much happier in the sea than in the hot water, still am. And so that it was a natural progression for me to swim in the sea and do 6-7 mile swims quite comfortably. It wasn't a hardship for me, it was just natural. It was just a very natural thing for me. I did Lake Windermere when I was 17, and when I finished that, the organizer, who'd never even heard of me, said, "You know, lass," this is a Yorkshire accent, "you know, lass, if you can do that, you can do Channel." And I hadn't even thought about swimming the Channel at that point. And then it transpired that 1975, which was the year after, was the centenary year of Channel swimming, when Captain Matthew Webb had swum it in 1875, and the Channel Swimming Association were running a relay race to commemorate 100 years of Channel swimming. So I came back to Jersey. I spoke to my coach and my dad and my mum, and I said, "Do you think I could swim the Channel?" In those days, you could phone up, book a Channel swim for the following year. It's not that easy anymore, as we all know. And so I booked a solo swim, and there was a nucleus of 6 or 7 of us that were training. So we put a relay team in for this Channel relay. And so in 1975, we trained really hard. We went over in the middle of August and we did the Channel relay. We won. We were the youngest team on the day, average age of 14 and a half. We won the race. And that's when I met Charlie the first time, because he was in a pub team, a drunks team, and another team. And I was the oldest female in this Jersey team. And that's when we first met. And then 2 weeks later, I went back and I swam the Channel as a solo, and there was another young lady who did it 2 days after me. So we came back heroes from that. And that was just kind of the start of my Channel swimming journey. I then represented Great Britain in Holland and in Spain and in Belgium over the next few years. And then my working life changed. I changed my job. My younger brother, David, also swam the Channel when he was 14 in 1977. And then in 1979, the Arabians were trying to organize a race across the Channel. And they asked me to represent Britain in the race. And I went, "Well, I've not done any training. I've been working, I've been traveling." So my brother said, "Oh, I'll do it." So at the age of 16, he did another Channel swim. I then went to Vancouver, became a nanny, traveled the world a little bit, came back after my mum had passed away. And then I decided to do a second Channel swim like my brother. So we were the same, a little bit of sibling rivalry. So I did another Channel swim 10 years later. Then that was the second decade. This decade thing has never been planned. It's just evolved the way it has, the way with working and life and everything else. So I did my second Channel swim in 85, and then we became the only brother and sister in the world to have done it twice each, from England to France. I then always had this vision of starting my own swimming school. So I came back to Jersey. I then married Charlie 10 years after we'd met, and he came back to Jersey with me. And then we started helping getting all the round Jersey swims to where they are now, and just developing that and reintroducing Jersey to France swims as well. And so over the years, the swims have just added on, and I've done various swims around the world. I've done a couple of Tampa Bay relays. I've done Gibraltar, which was a lovely swim. It was good fun. I won't even get into the water in the North Channel. So the people who do the North Channel are right up there for me. I am still in awe of Liz for doing that, because we talked about it a lot. I was on the boat with Prabhat, a young Indian boy who, when he did it, and he wanted me to jump in at the end, and I went, no, I'm not even going to jump in at the end. So I have my, I'm not going to do it unless I have to. So my husband, I was supposed to do, before I did my two-way, I booked this 2020 6-decade channel swim. I'd pay the deposit before I did my two-way, and it turned out to be a complete nightmare because I was then awarded my MBE, so which I'll show you pictures in a minute. And so by the time I got to do this, because of COVID and the weather was bad in 2021, I finally managed to get my 6-decade swim done last year. It's been quite well documented. And I did it in memory of my husband, who I lost in 2020. He was my biggest supporter throughout my life. And he was there on the shore for my two-way. I wouldn't let him go on the boat because he wasn't well. But this swim in 2020 was the nicest, bestest, loveliest swim I've ever done, because I had a perfect start, a perfect finish, and it was all for Charlie, and it was in his memory. So it was beautiful. So yeah, I'm very proud of that. As you can see, the conditions were beautiful as well. So if I can have the next picture, please. So this is Charlie with me and my little dog, Charlie, who I still have, who's my little angel. He's had his dinner and he's watching television quite happily. So yeah, so this picture was taken when Charlie had a transplant in his eye, and he was the first person in Jersey to have a cornea transplant. So this was taken for the local paper, but it's one of my favorite pictures of the two of us with the dog, actually. So I'm really pleased with that. Now this picture went viral. This was me after my 36.5-hour two-way English Channel swim. They recommend that after you do a swim like that, you're being horizontal for such a long time, you need to stay horizontal for a little bit longer to get all your blood gases and all your, all your balance sorted out. And this was me back on the boat, wrapped up. I was so hot anyway, but they wrapped me up. You can see by my eyes how sunny it was the day of the swim. And yeah, it was a very famous picture. It went all around the world. So I'm very pleased with that.
I think there's a second one as well, isn't there?
There is. Now, this is me receiving my MBE, which you can see on the picture. And that was Prince Charles then. This was awarded me in the Queen's Birthday Honours List in 2016, predominantly for 27 years as president of the Jersey Long Distance Swimming Club and my services to long distance swimming. And it was Prince Charles that presented it to me. So I was very proud of that. I have been presented to the Queen in the past as well. So I've been presented to both of them. So this was this was Charlie's proudest moment when he came to watch me get this. And there is another one in a moment. Oh, there we are. Yeah. So this is Charlie's proudest moment of his life, when the pictures of two of us with my MBE. So yeah, that was in January 2017 when I went to collect it.
Fantastic. And yeah, I don't know if we can show that first picture again. You wanted that as the last.
Yeah.
There we go. Yay.
There we go. So this was taken at the end of my swims. I came back to Jersey, and the local paper wanted to have a picture of me in the water. The tide was very low. So there's my hat and goggles on the side with my sunglasses on there, just to say, I'm done. I've finished my swim, and I was very happy and very pleased. And so I'm having a little bit of break from swimming at the moment, but I will get back to it, and I'll swim for pleasure this summer. I'll be doing a lot of coaching. There's a lot of kids I'm involved with who want to swim with me. So I've got my Little Mermaids group that I swim with on the weekends. And so we'll be developing that and getting them back into the sea as well this year. So my journey isn't over, but just having a little break at the minute.
That's great. And have fun rowing. You're
absolutely
kind of stepping into rowing now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sal. And let's hear from our fourth panelist, Liz. What was your journey like?
Okay, so so my journey is similar to some of the others. I was born in New York City. I don't know if any of you guys can tell from my accent at all. What accent I like to say. So I was born in New York City, and when I was a toddler, my family moved out to Long Beach, Long Island, which is on the ocean, on the Atlantic Ocean. We used to spend hours and hours, but as a consequence of the heavy surf, and there was a back bay, we all became, we all went down to the community pool and learned how to swim. So that's where it started. I loved it. I used to wish to be on the swim team with my brother and sister who were taller than me and older than me, and I finally got them to waive the height requirement, and I was able to start swimming with the swim team, little age group swim team. When I was about 7, we went up to Canada to camp, which was there was a swim camp called Accomack up in Canada. It's about 4 hours north of Toronto. And we would get out of school, and the next day we would end up on this ice cold lake in Canada, where they would literally take you out and put you in the sauna when you were done. But I loved it. I just couldn't get enough of it. And as a consequence, it was, I just loved it. Like Gina and though a full English person, Sally, my dad was English and incredibly proud of his English heritage. So as much as we were swimming and coming home maybe with little ribbons and stuff, his comment to us would always be, and he was completely Brit when I say this, that's all well and good, but you're really not a swimmer unless you swim the English Channel. And he would compare that with, like, that's the Mount Everest. That's really showing that you are a swimmer. So I swam high school, I swam in college, and then went to work. And I didn't even think that there was swimming after this time, because at the time there wasn't any swimming after that time until you got to be 25, and then you could start swimming with the masters. I was out of the state of Connecticut. I was down in Virginia, landlocked, but I moved back to Connecticut when I was 25 and joined the master's team. And it was there where I was so inspired by these adults. These are like my parents. These are older than my parents. They're 70 years old, and they're swimming, masters swimming. And I hadn't been in the water for a very long time. So as a consequence, I was in the back of the back lane, which I got to spend, as they threw me out, but I got to meet these men that were in their 60s, swimming, my age now, swimming and training and competing. And I just was so in awe of them. And then I moved into the city, and there was no, I went back to my normal, very heavy work life. And so I stopped swimming. And then in the 90s, I started running, mostly because I needed to exercise it. And really the trigger for me was my mom had passed away, and I decided to run the New York Marathon in honor of her. And I've heard this, Pat, when we do things one and done, there was supposed to be a one and done for me. And I loved the training. I loved everything about it. And I realized how much that athletic piece of my life was missing, that physical working out. And how much, not just physically, but how much mentally I was missing it. So I fell in love with running. I kept running, and I ran, New York and Boston and Paris and London, and had this wonderful time seeing the world and getting out of work, and actually going to do something that didn't look like work. And for many of you, this is in the 90s. We're still kind of barely on email. We don't have the internet yet. So it's everything's still being done by mail. One of my engagements ended up in Baltimore, and I got to work for this great company down there. And when I went down there and I stayed in Annapolis. So my journey then starts for my marathon swimming, because I swam with this wonderful group of people in Annapolis, and they decided that in 2001, they were going to do an English Channel relay. And it was Maryland and me, so the state of Maryland, for those out of the country, and one Connecticut kid. And it was, and I would highly recommend for some of the folks out here that are thinking about the English Channel or some of these swims, do a relay.
Yeah.
It is one of the best ways to learn about the swim.
Absolutely.
You know, it is absolutely a wonderful way to learn about the swim. You get over the understanding of the location, so what Dover looks like and all the stuff. And back then there was just an internet cafe. There wasn't Wi-Fi yet. So so I got to swim this English Channel relay, and I decided as I was preparing for that, that I wanted to look into doing a solo. And I did the relay. I signed up for a solo when I was done. So in 2003, almost 20 years ago, this August, I swam the English Channel. And I had my sister on board, and she was my crew chief, and I've been very fortunate. She has been part of my journey every step of the way, along with lots of friends and support. And I had my first cousin from England on the boat, and I swam in 9 hours and 5 minutes. And it was completely joyful. And my father was there. Not on the boat, but he was in Dover, and he passed the next year. But it was something like, I have photos of us in the White Horse, which is what used to be the place where people signed their name when they were done. Those that, you know, just smiles and cheers and love and joy that, you know, you can't replace. You can't ever even imagine that they happen. So rolling forward,
You want to show
where I
some of
thought
your
that was a
pictures?
one and done,
Yeah, let's show some
I
of your
fell in love
pictures.
like everybody else on this call.
All right.
So I ended up, you know, so this looks like an English Channel swim. So after I swam in 2003, I came back. I then did Catalina, and then in 2007 set my path to do a two-way. And this is where like the North Channel fear comes in. Is one of the during my two ways, I have asthma, so at some point, because of aspirating water and things like that, and I know we're supposed to be encouraging people to be out there marathon swimming, but I aspirated and had to stop the swim. So so I eventually did do a two-way English Channel, but in the meantime, I got to meet all these people all around the world. So if you want to show the next photo, this is in Molokai. So so I at the time hadn't started a journey to do all these wonderful 7 oceans, which is the English Channel, the North Channel, Cook Strait, Molokai. Oh, there you go. That's a nice map. Strait of Gibraltar, Catalina, and Sugaru. These are just iconic swims, and I was very fortunate to meet, you know, this people on the beach in Dover, people who knew somebody that knew somebody, and I got to do these incredible swims. So these are the 7 ocean 7 swims, and I did Dover, then I did Catalina, then Strait of Gibraltar. I went to Sugaru twice.
Oh.
The first time I, you know, was weathered out. I didn't get to swim, and as you can imagine, I mean, the challenges of the Ocean 7 is, you know, the training for distance and speed, and the marine life, especially for me, jellyfish, cold water, strong currents, logistics of even finding a pilot on some of these, and the big thing, money. So imagine taking time off from work, or being a parent that's leaving their family to go across the world to swim, and then arrive there and not have the weather or the wave conditions make it unswimmable. So it's a big undertaking, but it's, you know, over the last 20 years, you know, my journey has been incredible. I can't wait for the next 20. It's been so enriched by people I've met and places I've seen, the cultures I've experienced. This is me getting out, getting in for my test swim for Sugaru. But, you know, the support I received and being able to share in other people's success, it's just been phenomenal. I really just love it. So this is Ichi, and I met Ichi on the beach in Nova. In Dover. He was the person that he's just an amazing man, and would bring Japanese swimmers to Dover for, you know, maybe a month to train, because they would need to get acclimated to the water. And he supervised my my swim in Sugaru, and we just really got on that swim really involved in the culture of Japan, and going in the onsen, and really being immersed, because we weren't in Tokyo. We were in a small fishing village waiting to swim. So you realize how lucky you are. I never take for granted how lucky I am to be able to do this.
Yes. Oh, and there's you and your sister.
This is my sister Peggy, who is, you know, my rock. Also, you know, she's the boss of me. She has been since I was a little kid. So she's the boss of me as my older sister. She's the boss of me, you know, when it comes to swimming. And one thing I will always say, listen to your crew. They see a lot more than you'll ever even imagine you're thinking about. You're not the worst person to ask. This is me finishing up my North Channel. I'm coming up on the ladder now. They look okay.
Yeah, you look alive.
So,
thank you so much. Wow. Attendees, I know the panelists cannot see you, but let's give them all a huge round of applause for just sharing with us their swim journeys. You who are just beginning open water swimming, or consider yourself kind of a middling swimmer, can probably learn a lot from these extremely accomplished stories. And it's never too late to start. That's one of the, and it's never you can swim until you're in your hundreds is the other side of that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to suggest, if you are at home or at the office, I'm going to stand up right now, just shake my body a little bit, just like for 5 seconds. I'm going to invite all the panelists to do that. We're heading into the final part of our discussion, but I personally need to move my body a little bit. Feel free to do so. Jump up and down. And then I've got some questions that I'm going to ask. Just throw them out to the panelists. And I'm going to ask the panelists, if you want to be the first person to respond to this, please raise your hand. I'll try to keep an eye on that. I would love it if the panelists could talk to each other at this time. Don't be shy. Let's make this just a large conversation. The first question that we got from a swimmer in Seattle is, do you have any way to know when it is okay to keep pushing yourself, and when perhaps you should call it quits due to hypothermia, jellyfish, cramping, or anything else related to safety? And here's the second part of that question. Do you rely on yourself or your crew more for when to know when to call it quits? Who wants to respond to that? I saw Liz's hand first, then Pat.
Absolutely rely on your crew. I just mentioned that you are not the right person to be making that decision. That you should have a protocol in place and even simple questions. Where'd you eat dinner last night? What'd you have? Little things that they're going to notice. They're watching your stroke count. They are paying it, and that's their role as crew person, is they're there for your safety. And if they call the swim, as much as you're disappointed, make it easy on them. Get out. You will thank them, because you want to be able to come back and swim another day.
Yeah, good point. Pat?
Yeah, I agree with Liz. You know, you have to listen to your crew, but also too, my crew and I will talk about, like the stroke count beforehand. They know what my stroke count is, and if it starts to slow, it's like a red flag that something is happening. But also too, as a swimmer, I will let them know if there's anything that I feel different,
Yeah.
you know, if I'm getting very cold,
Yeah.
it's kind of getting them the heads up.
Mhm.
But the crew, they always are the first ones, and you have to really rely on them to let you know.
Any other input from the other? Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
So what I would add to that is that's where selecting your crew becomes pretty important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people that you trust. And I agree with Pat. Oftentimes I'll know that something's like, maybe I'm starting to feel a little bit cold. So I might say on my next feed, can you warm it up? Can you warm up my feed? Or can you do this? Or can you add this? And those things help. The two swims that my two double crossings, you know, I pulled myself, you know, so know yourself as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, I know, you know, you need to know yourself, but if you're, you know, your crew is the boss.
Yeah. For those who aren't familiar with the word pulled, it means quit. And
Yeah.
that's a really hard call to make when you're the swimmer. So it takes a lot of courage and self-knowledge to make that call. And that's why they're saying you need the external input. So yeah, Sal, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate that in any of my swims, I've never come out. I've always completed my swims, and I think that's just, I don't know, that's just me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to talk to you from a crew perspective now, because I've been a crew many times for people, and the crew is crucial, because you pick your crew and have minimal crew. You don't need a circus on board.
Yeah.
You need one or two people that know you very well, and they need to know how far you can push yourself. I've been very ill. I'm very sick to my stomach on 3 of my swims, and people have watched me, and I have thought they might take me out, and I have said to them, don't even think about it, because I've been fine, but I've got through it. But that's just me. But not everybody can push through that, and I have to know myself when I do. But from a crew's perspective, you have to know whether that person is getting cold. And I remember with Liz and I were on a boat with a chap called Eric 2 years prior to that, when he tried his first English Channel swim at 16 hours. We were still 6 miles from the French coast. The swim hasn't started on your French coast, and Gina will understand this, until you are 2 or 3 miles off the French coast. That's when you're in the French inshore waters.
Oh.
That's when your English Channel really starts.
Oh.
And until you get to that point, that's the easy bit. Then from there, then you start your swim, because that's the tough bit. And Eric got to 6 miles off the French coast. He'd been swimming for 16 hours, and he was going backwards for an hour. And the pilot came out and said to him, Eric, it's going to take you another 10 hours to get into the French coast. Do you have that in you? And he was a grown man, and he said, I can't do that. And he climbed out of the boat, and his words to me and his crew was, sorry to have kept you waiting. He was a true Brit. But you have to know your swimmer, KYS.
Yeah.
You have to know your swimmer, and the swimmer needs to know your crew. And it has to be a bond, and they have to know each other. And that's really very important.
Well, here's a question that came up from a lot of people. What suggestions do the 4 of you have for anyone who is considering doing a longer swim than they ever have in the past? And Gina, I'd sure like to start with you on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's important to have a plan. You know, some people hire coaches. I didn't have a coach, but I did have a plan, a training plan, and, you know, to have a system in that plan where you're, you know, distance week, you know, speed week, you know, off week, because rest is really important. Additionally is give yourself some time. Give yourself time not only to physically physically train, but to mentally train. You know, Alison Streeter, the Queen of the Channel, said, you know, it's what 80% physical, 20% mental. Versus that 20% physical, 80% mental. And it really is. All the swims that I've experienced are that way. So have a plan, give yourself time, get a great support network of people, join this great community because they're edifying and they will help you and they're positive people. So that would be my advice.
Anybody else want to jump in? Liz?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one because I agree with everything that Gina said. And when I first started, I would have to train after work, and it may be that I don't have a swimming buddy. I would absolutely recommend having swimming buddies. And even if you're doing a long swim, maybe split it up. Have one come for the first 2 hours and have somebody come for the second hour. But what I would say is safety first. So I would have someone come and read a book, sit on the book. Just know I was there. This was before we had swim buoys really at that point. Now we all have them. I highly, it's like wearing like someone biking with me. They have to wear a bike helmet.
Yeah.
It's almost at that point right now. I don't want to swim with anybody that doesn't have a swim buoy.
I agree.
But ask a lot of questions, listen, share your experience. And I think one of the best things you can do is go crew for somebody that is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Go be part of their team and their support. And I was fortunate to be able to train with somebody that was getting ready to do the English Channel in 2022. So I got a lot of knowledge that way, a lot of experience, a lot of, training and base to go through. And then the only other thing is say it out loud and keep your life in balance. The worst thing we can do as athletes is go and say, I'm doing a 6-hour swim and then come and sleep on the couch the rest of the day and not be part of your family and be engaged. And because that's not going to get you a lot of cheerleaders, so you need to be able to remember that your swim isn't going to be 6 hours. It could be 12 or 15. So, build that mental and physical endurance, and it doesn't always have to be in the water.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to jump in? Go ahead, Sal.
Yeah, and you for a 24-hour swim or whatever or more, the 24-hour club, we were going to talk about that. The 24-hour club is for anybody who's done a swim for 24 hours or more.
Okay.
And there are 3 of us here that have done that. Oh, 4 of us. Yeah, all of us, in fact. So we're exclusive, which is great. But you also have to get used to lack of sleep.
Yeah.
And that comes with just life in general. People say to me, how do you train for 36.5 hours? And I go, you don't. I trained to swim from England to France and back to England. And there was no way I was going to get out until I got back to England. And that was up here. As Gina said, it's in your head. You have to get your mindset ready for that. And too many people have thoughts that their swim is going to be, well, it's 21 miles. I swim 2 miles an hour. It's going to be 12-hour maximum. Well, they don't understand the tides, which is why, as we all say, go and do a relay. Get seasick on the boat, get used to that, because that is all part and parcel of the channel swimming journey. It's not just about swimming from England to France. There's a lot of preparation, as Liz has said, as Gina said, as Pat said. It's the journey to get there. Most people only ever do one English Channel swim in their life. There's a few people that are not in that category, but there is, you just have to swim and swim and swim. And your marathon swim needs to be another swim. It doesn't have to be the iconic swim you're ever going to do. It's got to be just another swim. And you just have to get to your start line rested, healthy, uninjured. And that is so crucial, that you are not overtrained. And I'm really advocate of not overtraining. And I think a lot of people would believe in that. That you need to be at your start line, well fed, well hydrated, and rested, and then you can swim forever. You just swim and you just keep swimming, in the words of Nemo and Dory.
Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Sal more. It's just you just keep on swimming. And if you have those thoughts, those negative thoughts, and I'm the queen of negative thoughts, but what I do, I just keep on reassuring myself that I'm not slowing down. I'm not showing any signs of hypothermia. It's just the mind, you have this mindset. No one likes to be freezing cold. Like when I was swimming the North Channel, I got stung every inch of my body. from those lion's manes jellyfish. And, but I was determined. And I kept on saying, well, you could be, shopping for your grandchildren back in Donegal, but then I'd say to myself, but Pat, you're here to swim the North Channel. And I was successful. But the very first time, they had to stop my swim 1.6 miles from the finish line.
Oh,
And it was because of the riptides.
yeah.
But, you have to respect Mother Nature. Mother
Yeah.
Nature wins every time.
Yeah.
And you have to always have a plan B. If you do not succeed, what is your plan? To go back or just try another swim? And it could be something local. It's
Yeah,
always good
yeah.
to have that plan.
So I have one last question before we turn it over to Melissa Kegler, who has been collecting questions from folks on the webinar. This comes also from the Seattle community. How do you self-comfort when things really start to hurt? I mean, do you do mantras, you hum, do you do affirmations? Do you anticipate victory? What goes on inside your soul when things are really starting to hurt?
Gosh, that's a good question. Have you ever, yes, go on, Liz.
Well, I think, I'm kind of fortunate because I completely blank out during my swims. I am, I don't know if it's a form of dynamic meditation, but,
I agree.
I completely blank out. So I'm fortunate in that regard that I don't have those conversations.
Okay.
Except for the one time I had the conversation, which was the start of my successful double crossing, which for the first 3 hours, I was throwing up, and I don't typically get seasick, but I mean, like, for those old enough to remember the movie The Exorcist, but that's what it was like for 3 hours. And I'm having this conversation and I'm exhausted. I hadn't planned to swim that day. We were planning on swimming the next day, but there's always a pilot that's going to come out and say, it's going to be a little, bumpy at the beginning, but then it's going to become a mill pond. Don't ever believe them. But it was terrible, and there was lots of fumes, and there was like I didn't know what was going on, but I was having this conversation, and for someone that's an introvert and doesn't really talk, I said to myself, Liz, you have to decide on the next feed. You're either getting out or you're going to shut up. And that was it. And I made the decision to shut up, and that was, then
the rest is history.
Completed the channel. And as it turns out, just so you know, there was a fellow that was swimming at the same time doing exactly the same thing as I was, a double crossing, and he was equally as sick and never had been sick before.
Weird.
So
yeah,
don't know what was going on there, but we both had a bad karma for the first 3 hours.
so how else? Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
One thing about the vomiting, I've had issues with that all my swimming career. And what I do in my training, and I've never really heard of any other marathon swimmers doing that. If I'm going to do a long swim, let's say for 3 hours in one day, I tank up on my fluids and I'm well hydrated before the swim. But for 3 hours of swimming, I don't take one drop. And it's training my body that I can swim comfortably for 3 hours. So if during my marathon swim, I'm vomiting, I know that I can swim, and it gives my stomach a rest. And as soon as I'm able to take something, it'll be just a little bit, a fourth of a cup, just to hold it down. And it'll be higher in carbs. And that way it'll kind of settle my stomach, and I'll swim for another hour. And my crew knows that if there's any more issues with vomiting, they're just going to I'd rather have a little bit stay down than to drink a full cup and have it come back up.
Gotcha. And that's a nurse speaking right there too. Go ahead, Sal.
Yeah, well, Pat will know this, that I started in my life doing fasting in 2009, 18, 19. And so in my life, I fast during the day. So my swim last year was quite revolutionary, and my Round Island swim the year before, because I decided that if I spend my life just eating one meal a day, why would I change it on a swim? So I had very minimal feeding. My carbs were very weak. And in fact, on my swim last year, it was a very, very hot day in August. The sea was flat. I think I had maybe had in my whole swim, I probably had about maximum of 4 carbohydrate feeds. But that 5 or 6 hours, I asked for water to be given to me in between my feeds, just to keep me hydrated. It was the best thing I ever did. I had very minimal food, and I finished the freshest I'd ever been at the end of my swim. And I think Liz does the same. I think Liz trains on nothing, really.
Yeah, I do train on nothing, but what I would say to this group is you need to know your body.
Yeah.
You need to get out. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, we've been swimming a long time. You can hear
Yes.
that how individual we all are. But you need to do what's right for you. And for instance, I feed every hour. A lot of people feed every half hour. Some people swim every 45 minutes. You need to do what's the right feeding for you, and with the right nutrition. And the only way to do that is to test it during, multiple long swims.
Yeah,
and there's not just let's go out there once for 6 hours, but let's do a 6 hour one day and 4 hour and test it.
And there's no right and wrong. You have to work out what food suits you and what suits your stomach. In the salt water is different to fresh water. The feeds are different, and you have to work out for yourself what works for you. So ask everybody in your community, ask us. I've been through chicken, rice pudding, all sorts of different feeds all through the 60 years of my swimming career, and I have come to the conclusion what works for me. But everybody, and I've seen so many different people feeding in different ways, and what works for some and what doesn't work for some. And on my Lake Tahoe, for instance, I swam for 8 hours, and then I got altitude sickness and was sick for the last 8 hours. So everything I ate came straight back up. Exorcist again. It was horrendous.
Yeah. Gina, and then Pat, and then we'll go over to Melissa. Go ahead.
Okay.
So the thing that sustains me, I think, is the very thing that I love about marathon swimming, and that is that you have to be in the moment or you drown. So I try to concentrate on gratitude for my crew, the privilege and the blessing of being in a beautiful body of water, and hopefully friendly animals around me, and just how privileged I am to be healthy enough to do this, and really try to stay in that moment instead of thinking about how I'm feeling or how much further I have to go, or how miserable I am, but try to stay. People try to sing. I can't sing. I sometimes count, but this is really what sustains me.
Thank you. Pat?
Yeah, I was just going to add to the feeds. You really have to figure out what works best for you in your training, because what might taste good on land, if you try it during a saltwater swim, it won't work. And I had that experience early in my career. I bought all those top name carb mixes, they were $50 for a little container. And every time I drank it, it came right back up. So now what I do, I mix maple syrup with water. And that's
that works for you.
And I love it, and it stays down. But that works for me. It might not work for someone else. But I agree with Liz and Sal that you have to try this during your training. And then you'll be able to bring it forth on your big swim.
Yeah, thank you to all of you. Melissa, why don't you come on, go ahead and turn on your video. And I know you've been scrabbling back there, collecting all the questions that have been coming in. Just wanted to introduce Melissa Kegler, Triple Crown winner and record-breaking ice swimmer in her own right. She is our local champ in the Northwest of the United States. So hi, Melissa, what do you hear from the questions?
Hi, Gila. Thanks, and thanks everybody for joining today. Before we get to the questions, I just want to say how great of a panel this is. First of all, Gila, I always say you're presenter, host extraordinaire, so energetic. But these ladies are absolutely fantastic. They're inspiration, role models, mentors to me. I've met and swum with many of them, and it's just awe-inspiring to hear them and really help me to think about where I want to go in swimming and my thoughts in swimming. So thank you all for being present. For those people on the call today, we got a lot of great questions. We won't be able to go through all of them, but I did categorize them and really hit on some of the ones that were repeated often, and some just fun ones too. So one of the number one questions about wildlife, and I love wildlife that we got, is people want to know about jellyfish. I love jellyfish, but people are curious about how do you prepare for jellyfish mentally? And then I think, Pat, you mentioned something about shaving cream. And what exactly did you mean by that, by the jellyfish barb removal?
And I'm just going to say here, I'm not going to facilitate this part. So just jump on in, whoever wants to answer that.
Okay.
I'm going to go, Pat.
Liz, you had the shaving cream.
I did.
Was it Liz got the shaving cream? Yes.
Yeah, I was the shaving cream, but again, it was from somebody else. And again, I can't say it enough. Reach out to the community. For me, preparing for North Channel and this similarly for some of the other swims at open water, Cook Strait has like no-see-ums. There's stuff out there. What I found was taking Benadryl for 6 to 7 days, the week before you go to do a swim that typically has jellyfish. So you take your Benadryl, you start building up that antihistamine stuff. And then on the day of the swim, you may take an extra one, or take them for the day of the swim. And then, like I mentioned, this was a great tip to help if you have been stung, is to do this. And this is a volume of jellyfish. I wouldn't recommend that you plan on this on every one of your swims, but for the North Channel, I think it's probably the right thing to prepare to deal with that. And then when you're done with your swim, continue with the Benadryl, and that will just help ease your reactions to it. For me, it was particularly challenging because I was more afraid that much toxins would trigger my asthma. So I was also trying to prepare for, how do I prepare for a bad asthma attack also. So and Pat, maybe you have additional stuff for jellyfish. You have them up in Maine.
Yeah, well, when I was swimming the North Channel, I had a jellyfish lion's mane go right onto my face, and I had to grab the dome, take it off. But I agree with you about the Benadryl. I was taking that. And also I taught my crew about anaphylactic shock. So they were fully aware of if there was an emergency of how to react to it, because I did not know how I would react to lion's manes. But I was fortunate. Even though I got stung every inch of my body, I never got any bad reaction. I just felt like I had a sunburn the following day. But here in Maine, I got stung by a jellyfish right across my face, and it felt like I was being electrocuted. I had never felt anything so painful. And also in Japan, I got stung severely there. But having the Benadryl on hand and also teaching the crew, and also know the type of jellyfish that you might experience, because there's different treatments for different types of jellyfish. And it's just to know what the area is and go from there.
And it hasn't affected me, but I think the treatment with the credit card and the shaving cream is that you put the shaving cream on your skin and you use the credit card to scrape off the shaving cream with the remainder of the tentacles. I think that's what people have done. I've very lucky. I tell people that we swim in the jellyfish's house. So we should respect their lives. And I can probably say in the whole of my swimming career, I've been stung maybe 10 times because I don't look for jellyfish, but there are people that look for them and then get stung by them. But I I've been very fortunate, and you're not going to get me in the North Channel, so that's not going to worry me. So, and we don't have them really badly over in Jersey, so we're very lucky here. So
I think it's important too to know the body of water and the type of jellyfish
Yes.
you're going to encounter. Like in Catalina, they had these tiny little annoying little ones that give you a little zap, but it wasn't bad. And then, as you heard in the North Channel, the lion's mane, you know, could have a detrimental effect. So you need to know what you're up against.
yeah, many people have ended up in hospital after the North Channel with toxin buildup. So
Great, thank you for that. One of the other questions that came in that a lot of people asked is, people work, they have families, they have lives, and trying to fit swim in training with everything life is just difficult. How do you guys do it?
I can tell you how challenging it was when I was working as a nurse. I was working full-time. And when I got out of work at 3:30, I was the full-time babysitter for my grandchildren. My daughter was a 40-hour-a-week nurse. So I would get up in the morning at 5:30, wouldn't come home till midnight. But what I did was cross-train with my grandchildren. I'd put them in the stroller, would go for a walk. The days that I had off from babysitting, that's when I would capitalize on my swimming. But on some weeks I was only swim training 3 days a week. But I found that with busy schedule, family for me always comes first. And what I did when I had the free time, that's when I'd swim.
yeah, I'm very lucky. I can just go down. I'm 5 minutes from the ocean. I can go for a swim, and I can swim for an hour and then come back. I'm very easy, but I don't have a young family, so I'm very lucky.
I would say, I would add, and I appreciate that, Pat, because I'm the same way. I travel a lot with my work. There's not always a pool. Take advantage of those little windows that you have. I also did cross train. Maybe I didn't have a buggy, but I certainly I found that like core training and even boxing was a good side gig in terms of getting ready for training. And again, I think it's really mastering that. It doesn't always have to be in the pool or in the ocean to get the
Aerobic fitness.
physical core work that you need.
Yeah.
The key, you will not enjoy this a swim if it has created chaos in your family life. So it all is one. It's all about balance. It's engage. If you're going down the beach for a swim, bring the family. Or if you're going to go for a swim, create that free time for your partner to do other things. Have them have that same opportunity to do activities that they like to do. So it's a lot of balancing. I work a lot, I travel a lot. I was thinking about this today though. The game changer for me has been the internet and VPN for work, being able to work around the world, as opposed to before 2003, going to Dover and having the internet cafe where everybody is going there to do internet, versus today having global Wi-Fi makes a big difference. So it's balancing it and maybe working late or but I think it's all about balance.
And I do believe it's all about quality swimming and not garbage yardage. A lot of people just plod up and down. That's not going to get you fit. It's interval training in the winter, short and sharp, not overtraining, and just doing quality swimming, and not every day. You don't need to swim every day, and just trying to fit in maybe half an hour of sprint training or an hour of sprint training, and do your longer swims maybe at the weekend when you can have your family or friends involved. And it doesn't have to be every weekend. Just try and get the training in when you can. And I think you benefit from not plodding and swimming for hours and hours and hours, because it's not pleasurable to do that. You're going to do that on the day of your swim. You don't have to do that in your training.
And
So-
Gina, it seemed like you were trying to say something a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I just would say, I have so much respect and admiration for people that are able to do that. For me, it was impossible because obviously I had to stay fit as a diver, but mentally to prepare, I found challenging because my being in the Navy was so intense. I was traveling around the world, war zones. And so, it wasn't really feasible for me to dedicate myself the way I wanted to it. So just a different perspective there. I wish I could have, but as I say, I didn't really feel like I could until I retired. So
Yeah. Melissa, let's do 3 or 4 more questions just for the attendees. Just know that we're going to end a little bit before Pacific time, 1 o'clock. That would be on the hour. So we still have lots and lots of time to ask questions and to see the panelists talk to each other, which I truly enjoy.
Yes. So one of the other questions that came up which is another reason I'm so happy that we have women on this panel, and this is another, great women's panel that Gila has put on, is taking a look at the effects of menopause and how that affected your training, whether it was physical aspects of training, emotional, energy fatigue. How did that really affect you, or did it have an effect on your training?
So I think that the training and the swimming and the cold water, I don't even remember going through it, honestly. I mean, because I think
the same.
I think that I honestly think that having that exercise and really just going, having your body be doing what it's doing at the age of 50 or 55, whatever, or 45, whatever it might be, really, if I honestly think if I was getting a hot flash, it was making me warmer during the channel. I wouldn't have known.
Absolutely. I agree.
How about the 2 others?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Sal and Liz, because when I went through menopause, I didn't even notice. I mean, I was fine. No hot flashes.
No, I never had any symptoms whatsoever.
None. But I think the exercise is the key. You're staying busy and you're working out, and I think your body, gets accustomed to that. And I had no issues at all.
I'm glad you brought the question up, though.
Yeah, me too. This is
Melissa.
something that is not talked about as much as it should be, because typically there's not a panel of over 60s female open water swimmers. I just want to say that the demographic speaks for itself, that the fastest growing demographic of open water swimmers is women over the age of 40. And people ask me why, and it's almost self-evident. We want to get cold. We want to cool down.
That's true.
But there's another thing that went on for me during menopause, and that is, I do struggle with emotional downs. And my God, cold water swimming is the best thing that ever happened to me. It is my mental health pill, my emotional pill. And I know that many others share that with me. Can you guys comment on that?
Well, I can tell you that the word on the street here in Great Britain right now, everybody is talking about menopause. It's driving me nuts, because I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone, but I just feel that you have to go through it. It's life. And if you can do things to distract yourself, and we don't need, we've been swimming all our lives, or most of our lives, and none of us have had the symptoms. I don't think sorry, I'm interrupting Gina here, but I just feel that it's a lot of people are talking about it, and it's kind of a bit overkill for me. But then I don't have the problem. So, Gina, I'm sorry.
Oh, I agree with everything everybody said. For me personally, it's when I don't swim that I start to get weepy and down, and it just really helps me so much. And I too, being from Florida, I love the hot flashes in the cold water. That's just.
I would tell you that I don't know I felt very fortunate to have open water swimming during COVID. It was really having the ability, and we swam outside, and Connecticut is a cold state like Maine. The water doesn't necessarily freeze in Long Island Sound typically, unless it's really bad, but it's 37, 38 degrees Fahrenheit in February. And having the ability to go in and dip, and I would come out and first of all, be so productive.
Yeah.
And have that feeling of euphoria for hours.
Yeah.
Even for like a 10-minute swim, maybe a 500-yard swim in, sub 50, all of a sudden, it's and to do it with, girlfriends as well, and to go through that and having us all feel that, we're shivering, but it is the magical feeling. I hate to say it.
Yeah. The best therapy.
But it's but you have to be safe. Like I'm the safety police. I'm always going to mention, be safe about it, be with other people, have a plan to warm up, all those things. Have a good heater in your car would be a good one. Maybe not for you, Gina.
And what I've noticed also is that swimming, it helps out with menopause, but also if people have issues with arthritis. I find, I have arthritis, but it doesn't bother me at all. Not at all. I mean, my doctor was astounded that, here my fingers are all crooked, but doesn't bother me when I swim.
Yeah.
I think the swimming has really helped out.
Cool.
Okay. The next question that we have come in really deals with the emotional aspects and your thoughts on DNF. So do not finishes. A lot of people say that, the win is getting to the starting line, which I 100% agree. But we also hear of, there's a lot of heartbreak when you get to that mile right before you finish and the weather changes, the tide changes, something happens where conditions aren't safe and an observer pulls you. Could you guys talk a little bit more about that? Is it quitting? Is it not quitting? It's the nature of the beast. What's your perspective?
I've had several DNFs. North Channel, first time. English Channel, my very first time, 1.5 miles from the finish line. Suguru Strait, my very first attempt. I stopped it at 3 hours. And what has happened, I find I'm disappointed, okay, but I'm not defeated. I always have a plan. I always know that Mother Nature will throw something at the swim. That's part of marathon swimming. And what I do, I just say, okay, you can't beat Mother Nature, so I'm not going to beat myself up over it. And what I do, I just have that plan B, whether I'm going to go back, try it again, or just go on to another swim. But you have to face that emotion because it is disappointing. But you can't get defeated because marathon swimming, you have to expect that at least once or twice in your swim career, there'll be something that happens that's out of your control.
Yeah, it comes back to what Pat is saying, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger.
Yeah.
And this is an example. And again, I think all of us feel that, our swims, it is about the journey. So you're going to be disappointed at that moment. And then you're going to have like this amazing sushi meal.
Yeah.
And have a sake and all right, what's next? And literally that disappointment will last for just a few hours and or even for a moment. And then you're like, oh, let's go celebrate with my crew who is just as disappointed, and the captain's everybody on the boat is disappointed. And the worst thing you can do is make them feel worse.
Yeah.
They've dedicated hours and days and weeks of their lives as well, coming over wherever you've been. So I mean, some places though you don't mind going back to, and I think I any DNF or not even get started were wonderful places that I wanted to go back to anyhow.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so.
So in the channel swimming community now, they're now called, they don't call it a DNF. They call it a delayed success, which I think is much more positive. And I think we should change
I
our
love it.
terminology. The DNF
Yes.
is not there anymore.
Yes.
And
Delayed success. That's great.
absolutely. And what is beyond our control with the weather is beyond our control. We have no control over that. And we have to take that into consideration. It's not, swimming is open water swimming, long distance swimming is not just about the swimming. It's about everything that goes with it.
Yeah, and even if it's not the weather, something just wasn't right that day, you learned something.
Yeah, of course you do.
You
Learning
hope that you
experience.
walk away from every one of those experiences learning something.
It's a big learning experience every time you go out on the water, whether you're on a boat or in the water. It's a learning experience.
Melissa, let's take one more question. I'm sorry that I interrupted. Who is about to speak?
I
Gina.
was just going to say, I love the Teddy Roosevelt poem about better to be that person whose face is marred by sweat and dust and, you know, to not make the finish line, but to have been in the arena. I just think that.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks, Kayla. And I think this is a great question to kind of wrap things up, is talking about resources and the people that are just beginning their journey in longer swims. How do you find training groups? How do you find kayakers? How do you really take that next step to go and meet the people that are doing and assisting, you know, other swimmers? So could you talk a little bit about networking and resources in the swim community?
Dare I say, social media has changed the world and it's changed the swimming community. It's changed every sporting community. And there are people out there. I'm, for one, I can help anyone. I'll be at the end of a message. I'll be end of Facebook or social media, Twitter, whatever. I'm always happy to help. And I know these ladies will be very happy to help anyone that asks for help. And I'm always here. But just ask. You need to ask.
So, and I can add to that. That's absolutely true. And it's in social media has been a game changer. I'm the marathon director of a swim in Connecticut. It's a marathon swim. It's, 15 miles, and it's a great prep for English Channel. But and because of that, I often get people that reach out and say, I want to train for this. I live in Florida. Well, all the women in this group, and now that I know that Jean is in Florida, I will, we would all personally send a message to, like, anybody know anybody that lives in this area, and is there a training group down there? And that's how, a lot of the swimmers that have come to the Swim Across Sound, or people that I know that want to do, what was MIMS, now 20 Bridges, want to do. How do you get it? It's not even just, training. It's how do you get into that? How do you reach out to the right people? What are the steps? And there's not a standard, there's not a procedure manual for that. So it really does make a difference to just begin by reaching out and saying, anybody on this call can, on this webinar, can reach out and say, hey, Gina, I want to do this, alligator swim down in Florida, or around. There is an alligator swim, really.
Is there?
Around Key West, or around, how do I get, and whether it was, or there's maybe a swim up in Maine, like Peaks to Portland, right? That might be that's a great swim. And but anyone here can help. If we don't know somebody, we probably know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody.
Absolutely.
I just want to add too, there's a lot of great resources online. Stephen Monatones has his Open Waterpedia, and you can get tons of information, tons of resources, names of boat pilots. I know that I'm listed as a mentor. It has my email address, but Gila, you're welcome to pass my email address out. Willing to help out any swimmer worldwide. I get emails maybe, every other day from swimmers worldwide asking for tips, because they're aging, and here I'm 72, and they're looking at, they want to continue swimming through the whole life cycle and not just quit when they're 50. They want to continue, and they're just looking for tips. So, and I'm also on Instagram, so if anyone wants to connect through that, I'd be willing to be their mentor.
Oh, that is so generous of all four of you. Sal, one last comment, and then I'm
One
going to
last
ask.
thing. Yeah.
Go
I
ahead. Go
just-
ahead, Sal.
I have a delayed success with Swim Across the Sound. I was taken out in a storm. So I still have that to finish. I have unfinished business there one day.
Cool. So
Yeah.
she'll be seeing you, Liz.
One day.
So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to provide some closing comments in our last few minutes. I just personally just want to say how grateful I am to all of you. I have learned an incredible amount. And I'm a tiny little fish in a pretty big sea. I am just so full of gratitude that you said yes when I reached out to you if you'd like to be a member of this webinar. That's just been a very important thing for me this 2023. So thank you, all four of you, so much.
Yeah.
So starting with Pat, can you give us all some parting comments?
Okay. A special thank you to you, Gila Muir, and her team behind the scenes, Tom Field and Melissa Kegler, for all of their hard work and dedication in presenting this webinar, Older Women Rule the Waves. They helped bring an increased awareness to all of you that a person is never too old to enjoy the sport of open water swimming. I firmly believe the benefits of swimming greatly enhances all of our lives. Thank you.
Yay. Gina, how about you? What are your closing comments?
I just echo what Pat says. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And like I said before, it's been an honor. My advice to the folks out there is practice the presence of living in the moment. And from my experience, living with passion is about paying attention to what makes you, and following what makes you come alive inside, no matter what your age. There's got to be a deep intrinsic motivator, a fire inside you, something that makes this thing worth doing. Draw inspiration from others, hope for the best, and above all, believe in yourself. Dream big. I hope you all enjoy the journey.
Woo, love it.
Okay.
Sal, how about you?
All of the above, but we only have one life. Live it, love it, enjoy it, and just keep swimming safely.
Oh, love it. Love it. Thank you. Liz, how about you?
Well, I too want to thank. I mean, this has been just so much fun for me to be part of
Been
this
great.
panel, and just even if nobody was in the audience, and the fact that there were, this has been so much fun. I think for me, my last comments would be, if you have a goal, say it out loud and with conviction. Because I can say for me, the moment I wanted to attempt to swim the English Channel and I said it, the whistle blew and the train started pulling out of the station. Okay. I think Gina said, make a plan, find others that share your passion. You have a whole group here that do create a support community, even people that will sit on the beach, and then and be brave. I think sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone, whether it's facing open water, for the first time, or training with people that are faster than you or more experienced. I mean, we were all there. We were at one time. I was the one that saw everybody swim off, and I was still standing on the shore. So you have to be brave and be willing to get out of your comfort zone, and then most importantly, keep life balance. Your friends and your family are your most important assets and cheerleaders, no matter what you do.
The world is your lobster. The world is your lobster.
I too have some final comments. Tom, if you could show that last slide. All these women have said yes to life big time. And my hope to all the attendees on this call is that you too say yes to life. Happy swimming to everybody, and hope to see you in the future. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.